Measures that have been taken by the law enforcement authorities, like we've been talking about the need for rebuilding the trust. This inauguration ceremony also taking place at a time when tensions have been running high, the looming threat of violence and unrest. That's going to be a crucial hurdle for Joe Biden to actually pass when it comes to rebuilding the trust of the Americans and dealing with this polarization that exists, that has continued to divide the United States, as our experts have been telling us. That will be just one of the multiple crises that Joe Biden will have to deal with. But for now, the priority will be on dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, on the economic fallout as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. 400,000 Americans have lost their lives. And this transition coming at a time when emotions have been running high as a result. A historic ceremony and a transition unlike any other. Kevin, if I can ask you to comment also on the messaging that's come in from Joe Biden in terms of the address that was delivered by him. What stood out from that address for you?
Well, I thought he did what we expected him to do in terms of calling for unity. He made commentary that obviously referred to the past 4 years, but he didn't call out President Trump by name. He didn't directly attack him. I think he did what we expected he would do in terms of playing that role of trying to bring the country together. I thought he made an excellent point by pointing out, as you mentioned, the 400 plus Americans that have died. That's more than that were killed in all of World War II. And he said that. He definitely came across as someone who's going to take coronavirus more serious and a lot of these crises more serious. He talked about wearing masks. But he also, I think, made a very large gesture to the military. At the end, he said, God bless our troops. He closed with a blessing towards the troops. He headed right after the speech to Arlington Cemetery, which is the famous military cemetery in Arlington, right across the river from Washington, D.C. So the military will have an ally with Joe Biden. But I think he hit all the right notes in the speech, and I think he went out of his way to not name President Trump as a problem or someone who created a lot of division, which he did. But I thought Joe Biden did a good job of taking the high road there.
That's a very interesting point that you make there, Kevin. Stay with me. For those of you just joining us, these are the latest images that we're getting to you of the Joe Biden convoy. He's been sworn in as the next president. Vice President Kamala Harris also making history as the first woman to take charge of that position. A quick roundup of what we've witnessed over the last few hours. It's been an unprecedented ceremony coming amid widespread security threats. In fact, over the last few days, security preparedness dominating the discourse, an issue that has continued to prop up every time we talk about the preparedness and the ceremony and the transition. Unfortunately, security has been one aspect that has continued to be talked about, and that tells us in a way also about the challenges that lie ahead for the Joe Biden administration, which is why the president has time and again spoken about the need for togetherness and the need for building a better America. That's been his campaign motto. In the run-up to the inauguration as well, the common thread that ran through his messages and speeches and tweets has been that it is a new day for America. It is a new beginning and the start of an era that will have United States and its people stand together, stronger, more resolute, and determined to deal with the challenges and the divisions. As our experts have been telling us, a lot of contrast between the two presidencies that we've been talking about, the Trump presidency versus the Biden administration. At this point, as Joe Biden has been sworn in and has taken charge of the American presidency, multiple challenges, multiple crises. The priority, as far as the Biden camp is concerned, has been dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, the economic fallout, and the polarization. Mending the divisions, bridging the gaps, a disconnect in a way that our panelists have been talking about that existed between the president and the people on the ground. That needs to be bridged as well, and which is one of the reasons why Joe Biden has laid so much emphasis on standing together and healing America. The 46th U.S. president making his way to the White House. Kevin, take us through the reason why this has been such an emotional day for Americans. It's been a transition like none other, but at the same time, it's been an election like none other, and the expectations that come with the pressures for the Biden administration.
Well, for me, as crazy as the last couple of weeks have been, and really the last 4 years have been, I'm just happy that today we continue the tradition of peaceful transfer. We had the issue on January 6th, but today there were no issues. Republicans and Democrats stood up there together. We saw former President George Bush, former President Bill Clinton, former President Barack Obama, all standing next to each other. That's a powerful American tradition, and that continued. So that was a good thing. I think that we'll see what President Trump does after this. He still has a lot of influence. He's the most prominent Republican, so he still will have a role in national politics and endorsing certain candidates, and we'll see if he helps Republicans in 2022 and 2024. It remains to be seen, but they certainly will need his help if they want to take back some House seats and some seats in the Senate.
Right. Kevin, when you talk about priorities and dealing with the economic fallout, how convinced are you that the next few days will see the Biden administration deliver on those promises?
Well, I think he'll sign the executive orders he laid out. Some of the bigger initiatives will take more time, and they'll have to be scheduled. And we just seated 2 Democratic senators from Georgia as well. So the Senate will have to have their internal elections, decide who the next majority leader will be in those things. But there's no doubt that we know that he signed the federal mask mandate, I believe, of coronavirus to require people wear masks in federal business buildings and public buildings. But I'd like to see him take action, like you said, on the economy. I believe there should be a federal job guarantee. That anybody who wants a job should be able to get a job from the federal government, no matter what it is, depending on your skill level. They should have something for you to do. Again, that may take a little bit longer, but that's a bold idea that I believe President Biden should look into supporting. I believe he's going to halt construction on the border wall. He's going to say no more construction. That project's been a disaster in a lot of areas where new border wall was added. It made the wall actually weaker and worse. We had to pay for it, even though President Trump repeatedly promised that Mexico would pay for it. So border wall construction will be halted. I think that's something that he will do immediately. If he hasn't signed it already, he's signing so many documents right now. I think that we'll see even student loan relief come up. He's floated relieving $10,000 of student loans for everybody. I think that's something that could happen pretty quickly. Raising corporate tax rates, that's something he's also been very open about. And I think a big one is reestablishing the commission created by Barack Obama that would stop local police officers from getting military-style equipment without being vetted. I think given the events of, last year and George Floyd being killed and Breonna Taylor, some other victims of police brutality, that's going to be something that a lot of people on the Democratic side of the aisle will be looking at him to do. And I believe he's going to do that in the next couple of days. So He has a lot of power with these executive orders, and so far it looks like he's getting right to work. Well, he is getting right to work, and I have to say I'm pleased so far. But there's a lot of things that need to happen to bring about the largest change, and it will involve working with Congress and lobbying some people to support those things.
Right. Now, Anthony Blinken has already outlined the foreign policy vision and the basic structure of priorities, but there's always the China question and the conundrum that comes with it. To what extent do you think the Biden administration will be able to balance out that relationship?
Well, one of the things about President Biden is that he has a lot of experience in Congress. He's worked with a lot of the people who have been at odds with some Democrats on the other side. He's very close to Senator Lindsey Graham, for example. Their relationship's been damaged in the last several months, but that is someone who he was always close to. So I think that he's going to be very strategic about picking his spots. But I do think that as time moves on, and he just became president 3.5 hours ago. But I think as time goes on, we will see him tackle more of the full portions of the platform, maybe even going for Medicare for all. I definitely think pretty quickly, actually, that he will try to improve Obamacare, maybe adding a public option, sort of maybe getting closer to guaranteeing coverage for everybody provided by the government. That's something that will also come up. But I think that a lot of these ideas, when you take back the politics and take back the messaging that both sides put out, a majority of people support a lot of these initiatives. Most people say they agree that the government should provide basic health care for everyone. Most believe that, we're starting to see more people support even the concept of a universal basic income where people receive $1,000 a month from the government, something like that, particularly in this time of COVID. So I think because President Trump, the way he talked about things, it was so divisive. Even if he had a good idea, which I don't think he had that many, there were a lot of people who would just be against it. It became so much about him as opposed to the actual work and the issues at hand. And I think with President Biden, we'll see us get back to at least debating the issue itself, the proposal, details of the proposal, and it won't be dominated by this personal feelings about the president, which I think really held us back. So that's a big thing that President Biden will bring to the table. We can focus on the real issues and not on his personality.
Right, and even the farewell address by Donald Trump, would you agree that that speech in itself was so much more about him than his last 4 years, or as compared to even the way he referred to Joe Biden?
Yeah, it definitely made it about him and talking about how he did so much, and he set a foundation for Joe Biden to have success. And again, no real serious discussion about the coronavirus victims. A big contrast in style, whereas Joe Biden,
right,
be sure to make it clear, hey, we've lost 400,000 people, that have died in 1 year, less than a year. This is a tragedy. And, Donald Trump, it's almost like he can't admit that there was a problem. And that's a big difference between the two of them. So, I'm, for one, am happy to see a return to more normal. I think President Trump did set us back, especially when it comes to the coronavirus. I think we could have had this under control if he wouldn't have made it so political. Something as simple as wearing a mask, social distancing, not having events with more than 10 people, those types of things. He didn't follow that guidance, and it got us where we are today. I'm glad we have a president now who takes something as serious as the coronavirus and treats it with the respect and seriousness it deserves.
Right. And Kevin, as we speak, those images that we are getting to our viewers from Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden, U.S. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. It's been a very emotional few hours for America as that transition has been successfully completed and the next president has been sworn in. Joe Biden waving out to his supporters, to the people at large. The message that's come in from the president, even during his speech, has been one about togetherness, and that's something that Americans, as we've been discussing, are looking forward to. That has been the common thread running through his speeches and his comments. There we have the president reaching out to his supporters and to the people, a quick jog to the barricades. Kevin, if you can also talk about the optics attached with this transition and the taking over of the new administration, the signal that Donald Trump has sent out, for example, by skipping the ceremony, and the way in which Joe Biden referred to Donald Trump during his address, a lot of contrast there as well. And even in these images that we are getting to our viewers, one can't help but notice this contrast in these images in itself that narrate a different story altogether.
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, first of all, this is a very surreal inauguration just because of COVID-19. Normally, the streets would be packed with people. It would be much louder, much more of a celebration. So it's already a little bit more solemn. And I think very emotional for Joe Biden, because, one, his son, Beau Biden, was so important to him. He loved him dearly. And really, they thought that Beau Biden would eventually run for president one day, that he had the potential to be the one to make the White House. Remember, Joe Biden had run for president twice before, didn't win. So I think so much of what he's thinking about really has to do to his son, who, of course, died from cancer about 5 years ago. He was only 46 years old. So, Joe Biden mentioned the reason he was even running for president was because he wanted to make sure Beau was proud of him. So I think so much of the emotion for him right now, I'm sure he's thinking about his son and wishing he was here. And sort of the same for Vice President Harris. Her mother was very important to her, a huge part of her life. And she's not here. She also passed not long ago. So I think both of them are reflecting on people who helped them get to where they are and are no longer here, which is also a contrast from Donald Trump because he had never held public office before, had never been a politician. He didn't have the same relationships he had built over decades working in office or having those kind of that solemn reflection of what it took for him to get there. And I think that shows through in the way this inauguration has played out, too. A lot of Joe Biden's oldest friends and supporters from Delaware, like the pastor who spoke during inauguration and gave a prayer. That's someone Joe Biden has known for over 30 years. So these are two individuals, especially President Biden, who have a lot of connections and have been around a long time. So it just feels more sincere. It feels like he really has put his soul into this. He said that in the inauguration speech, that his soul is in this. He's been doing this his whole life. And I think it's what we need at this time. We need someone with compassion and who cares.
And look at those images, Kevin. I mean, we have the president jogging all the way to his supporters and those who have been lining up to witness this moment, reaching out to them. This strong connect that he has established with those who have supported him, those who have voted for him, and the very emphasis that he has laid on how he is going to be a president for all Americans and the need for bridging those gaps. That also coming in from these images that we see of the president along with the First Lady as they walk up after their inauguration and make their way to the White House. Kevin, quick comment on the very optics attached with these images.
That gives me great pride in America that we're able to conduct this transition with no issues. There have been no violent protests or any demonstrations at all from what I've read. You see that it looks more like a normal inauguration, except for it's missing a large amounts of people who would normally be here. But I think this is a very positive day for America. It could have been a lot worse if we didn't know what to expect after the events of 2 weeks ago. So this is something that I think people who love America and who were hoping for the best can take pride in. And it's just amazing. I know that it's very emotional for President Biden to be in this situation. And there with his wife, Jill, he's just worked his whole life for this. And it's incredible.
Indeed, and many would say it's been a long wait for Americans as well, at least those who have expressed their faith in Joe Biden as their president. Like we've been saying, Joe Biden has repeatedly outlined that he is going to be a president for all Americans, and that has been the common thread running through his messages. There we have the U.S. President, Joe Biden, and First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, at the White House, a moment that's been watched not just by Americans, but by people across the world. A highly anticipated photo opportunity and an emotional moment for Americans who have been through a lot these last few days especially. It's not been an ordinary election like we've been saying. It's definitely not been a smooth transition, but it's a new beginning, and that brings with it renewed hope, expectations in the air, emotions that have been running high. The new president and First Lady waving out to the people of America, sharing that warm embrace as they make their way inside the White House. The 46th President of the United States, along with the First Lady, have entered the White House. It's a historic moment, an emotional day it's been for the United States. Americans have been closely watching this inauguration ceremony unfold, post which the President and the First Lady have now arrived at the White House.